Hey RV family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of review, as in I am not going to be scoring this album at the end of this video, and I'll explain why in a bit. But Kendrick's new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I can easily say that this is the most anticipated record of 2022. So many people knew it was Kendrick's time to shine and come back. One of the most poetic wordsmiths and lyricist songwriters and most prolific conscious hip-hop artist that sort of dominated the 2010s with some of the most insurmountable releases, not only from an emotional standpoint, but a resonance to so many deeply intrinsic topical issues to everything we're facing in our society right now. This, of course, culminated with the record To Pimp a Butterfly, regarded as one of the most powerful and most groundbreaking records of the 2010s. An absolutely massive record with so many tracks on it full of deeply personal lyrics and vulnerability and a lot of different angles to racial discrimination, inner cities, his childhood, the way his upbringing formed him into the man that he later would be, tackling everything from anxieties to depressions to expectations, and it was all backed by an extremely progressive sound that instrumentally carried on not only a progressive veneer but also jazziness and sort of abstract soundscapes, whether that be the way that he would layer everything or everything would cohesively come together as a project. In comparison, the much less heady and much more braggadocious type of record, Damn, sort of took Kendrick in a new direction that was polarizing. Some people really enjoyed this record, while others thought that he sort of downgraded and took a step down from what he was putting out on To Pimp a Butterfly. TPAB was such a mountainous release, and the fact that this man has already been included on the Rolling Stones Top 500 Albums of All Time, not once, not twice, but I believe 3 different times, goes to show the impact that he has had not only on our society, but just his own evolution as an artist. But besides the Black Panther soundtrack, Kendrick has been quiet. He has not really been releasing much. He's been very quiet overall. Even with features, he just has not been in the public eye as much as he has in the past. And this can be boiled down to a lot of things. The pressure and the suffocation that he had from the industry and his own mental health, but also fatherhood. Kendrick's getting older in age, and with that, his maturity is coming. And so Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers wasn't a really unfamiliar sort of guessing game to think that he was going to delve into his fatherhood and the things that came alongside with it, but filtered through his own lens, and I'm happy to say that's exactly what we got on this record. Now, I understand that I usually don't cover records from other genres, but Kendrick just has an ability to bridge the gap and bring people together with his lyrical meanings, no matter what walk of life or genre style you frequent. This goes even back to when Cover Killer Nation was covering him. And once again, he is returning to his vulnerable roots. This record is comparable to TPAB in many ways, not only lengthwise, but vulnerability-wise. But I also think on another level, it is the antithesis, the opposite, the mirror image in some form or fashion to TPAB. And the reason I say that is TPAB was very centered around making things poetic and beautiful and sullen and somber and really come off in a gorgeous way. Very intricate lyricism. Every single word, every single sentence had so much intricacy packed into it that you could really unpack it and see just how much he was putting into his lyricism. And of course that is still present here on Mr. Morale. But the one thing that I noticed straight away from the first 3 or 4 tracks is, unlike TPAB, this is much more raw and much more blunt. It still has the same amount of raw emotion and vulnerability and emotional resonance that TPAB and even Damn to a lesser degree had, and Good Kid, Mad City, but the difference here is there is an urgency to everything. There is a panic to everything. He's very frantic, and his usual nasally, whimpery sort of vocal delivery is amplified and exemplified even more so. Much like TPAB, this record has a lot of jazz instrumentation, and that goes hand in hand as well. Because at face value, the sheen is pretty. It's very beautiful. These instrumentals are hypnagogic, and they have this acid trip sort of quality to them, this trippy nature to it, and a lot of times are progressive in the same way, say, Frank Ocean or an Anderson .Paak is. But the more I listen to this record and the more I listen to these tracks individually, even the instrumentals, when they're prettier and not as in your face, progressively there is also this raw urgency that he is trying to push something out to you. And this record's difficult to unpack as a whole, not just because of the music itself, but also what this record represents. Not only is Kendrick reflecting not only his fatherhood, but also his Christianity, which he has filtered through a lot of his music, specifically on Damn, and to a lesser degree TPAB, but it's also his departure from Dawg Entertainment, his final record for them. And with all of the sort of controversy and the behind the scenes and the questions that the fan base has had and hip-hop fans have had, it's just been up in the air what exactly this record was going to impose. And I feel like he not only went above and beyond expectations, but took things in a direction that no one really could have foreseen. This is one of those records that everyone should experience at least once, and I would say the same about TPAB. But going back to the comparison of TPAB, where I said that it was like the antithesis of it, the rawness is apparent even from The Heart Part 5, which the Heart series obviously always leads into Kendrick's records in a powerful way, but the use of deepfake technology to show a variety of African Americans that have been involved with controversy, that have been involved with a variety of scandals and issues, whether it be Nipsey Hussle, Jesse Smollett, Will Smith, I believe O.J. Simpson's in it as well. It really is even more powerful where he speaks through their stories. That's the thing, everyone always has a story, and it's almost sort of egotistic and narcissistic in the way it comes across, but in the good way, because the way that Kendrick speaks these stories, it always feels like he is embodying these separate spirits and putting them into his music. Now, of course, racism, inner city issues, racial discrimination have always played massive parts in Kendrick's music. But on the flip side, this record is much more centered around his struggles and his coming to terms with his fatherhood, whether that be the expectations that he imposes on himself or the mental struggles he has had within himself. He has tried to cure through his religious background, through his fatherhood. And I understand that tongue-in-cheek wise, a lot of people don't appreciate Kendrick's spirituality, but even if you are not a religious person, it's hard not to be affected by how deeply personal he really puts his story out there, where it feels like the portrait of a man sitting down on his knees, breaking apart at the seams and begging for something to save him, begging for something to feel better. And yeah, while there are more braggadocious and cocky moments at times where he does flaunt himself a little bit, more of this record just feels like a downward spiral, and it feels like you are quite literally witnessing a man's breakdown right in front of your eyes, sitting wall to wall with these instrumentals and melodies and harmonies and features that you would think would be catchy and earwormy, and like you just want to snap your finger and bop your head because it's like this jazzy, off-kilter, abstract, progressive Anderson Paak-esque instrumentals, but it just is so sad and so raw and so vivid what he does. It's hard not to feel heartbroken and heart-stricken so many times across this record. The lyrics are stark, and even if the contrast with the instrumentals are very broad in the way they come across, this record at its core is just so emotionally evocative. But there is enough vagueness on this record to leave you questioning what comes next for him, or really what's going on with him. Even on the last track, Mirror, where he just keeps repeating this refrain, I choose me, I'm sorry. And once again, the portrait he is painting of the toxicity and the sort of suffocation that is strangling him and taking a hold of him and breaking him. For this being the record and being the ender, I think it is a beautiful send-off, not only for his last record for Top Dawg, but for this record as a whole. Because even if it is an ender, even if it is a closing of a chapter, a closing of a book potentially, it still leaves this hopefulness of, you know, there's gonna be something in the future, that Kendrick is going to mend and heal. It's like a symbol of recovery and insignia of his mending and maturity into his fatherhood and into his spirituality, finding more depth to it and finding more dimension to it. It's not necessarily a cure, but it provides a resolution and a closure, not only for him, but for the people listening to him. And after you go throughout this whole record and what he's laying out in front of you and just lays all of his blood and guts and glory and heart and soul and passion and mind right in front of you for you to see every inch of him, it's like you're getting that closure too, because he hits you with things that hurt maybe a little bit and sting, because you see yourself in a lot of what he talks about. The vulnerability and the emotions and the suppression that he feels across this record, the struggles and the difficulty in maintaining it and just holding everything together with just these loose strings, it feels like, that are just about to break because they're just being stretched so far thin. It's like you as a listener follow him through this journey and experience, much like TPAB, but in a more raw way. And by the time you're done with it, in this over 70-minute runtime finishes and comes to its crescendo and officially its climax, you can't help but just sit back and take a deep breath and feel this weight not only be pressed down on your chest, but lift from your chest too. It's powerful shit, and every single inch of this is something that needs to be experienced. I would say that if you liked TPAB, this is like the opposite TPAB, the shadow version of TPAB, because even though TPAB was gritty and it had a lot of grit to it, this record is somehow even grittier, even darker, even more foreboding, even if the instrumentals wouldn't give you that sort of impression on first listen. But yeah, I'm just enamored with this record, and I highly suggest it to everyone. I don't want to spoil too much of the finer details of this record, and the reason that I'm not ranking this record, which I said at the start of the video, and you will notice that this review was much more centered around the philosophy and the thematics, that's because that's what intrigues me with this record. This doesn't feel like the type of record you just say, you know, this sounds good, that sounds good, here's the score. This feels like the type of record that you unpack and you drink in and you listen to over and over to experience every side of the wall and what's swept up under the carpet. And I wouldn't feel right just doing a normal review for this and slapping a score on it. And I know that my normal audience probably isn't still here or doesn't still care, but I still feel like this is a video that I wanted to make because I think this record is going to mean a lot to a lot of people, just like TPAB did, and Good Kid, Mad City. And it certainly means a hell of a lot to me at this point in my life because I did relate to so many things across this record, and I hope you guys do too because it's catharsis. What are your thoughts of this new Kendrick record? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you thought about it. I can't wait to discuss this record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morse, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying fair.